So welcome to another edition, in fact, the 43rd edition of the internationally renowned podcast that is Life After Work, where normally four people who happen to be in their 50s and all retired for one reason or other get together. There's three of us today, but it doesn't stop us. So with me today, we have Ash Sharma.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. Hope we're all well. I'm sorry, I sent a sick note in from my missus about why I couldn't be here last week, so I hope you all got that, and apologies.
Paul, not good enough, was it, really? No. So anyway,
let us down, basically, Ash. Let us down.
I know.
Big
Sorry.
stuff. Beside me on screen is the world-renowned poet and podcaster and writer as well, Mr. P.A. Davies, Paul Davies, live from Greece.
Yes, good afternoon to you all. 43rd episode, and if memory serves me, I've missed one. Just saying. Just saying.
Not with us today is the other piper, Mr. Phil Harrison. He's shopping or some such thing. I reckon he's gone to see a stockbroker to work out what he can trade. And today we're calling this episode, and normally we don't name it up front, but we were a wee bit more organized. We're going to call it From Russia with Love, because we're going to talk not with any expertise at all, but what's been going on in the Ukraine. I have to say, it has just reminded me of the 1980s and the Cold War and all that sort of stuff. But we're going to give you our internationally geopolitical view of what Putin's up to, and what we think of it, basically, and what it all means. So guys, am I the only one who's been a bit vexed by what's been going on? Because this has really played on my mind in the last few days.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's been playing on mine. It's one of those little fizzling. Right, let's put it into some perspective. Putin is not a man who's going to back down. He's not. He will not back down because he's got the arrogance of being a leader of one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, country in the world. He has all the resources that he needs, the gas, the oil, he's got everything. What he hasn't got fully is the Ukraine. Now his issue is, and do you know what, I can kind of get his point here, but I'm not saying I'm siding with Putin, but I get his point that he's saying to the world, if you allow the Ukraine into NATO, they will use that military power to try and gain that independence against Russia, and you will have a war. There's no doubt about it. There will be a war if you let them into NATO. So he's using these, whether it's scaring tactics or he's going to come good on his promise and saying that, look, if they get into NATO, we're going to strike first. It's that simple. But it put me in mind, like we were saying off air, it put me in mind of the Cuban Missile Crisis back in the 60s. It's going to go right to the wire, boys. I really think it's going to go right to the wire, and somebody's going to have the finger. Do you know what else annoys me a little bit about this? The Americans, I think, actually want the war, because their sales in tanks and warfare machinery and guns and everything has gone through the roof at the minute. You know, they're selling to the Ukraine, the shipping arms over there and tanks. So the military bank, if you like, is absolutely overflowing at the coffers because they're doing a roaring trade. I'm just a little bit scared as to how big, if it will happen, how big it will actually get and who will be drawn into it and where will it end. That's my concern, really.
No, I mean, I think you're right, Paul. I mean, if you look, I've got a quote from Putin here. He's quoted as saying, he said, let's imagine Ukraine is a NATO member, like you said, Paul, and starts these military operations. Are we supposed to go to war with the NATO bloc? Has anyone else given any thought to that? Apparently not. So that's what they're scared of, exactly what you just said. So they're afraid of having, if you're looking at how strategically important Ukraine is, right on the border of Russia there, basically. And if it is a NATO bloc country, then Russia won't allow that. Russia can't have that. And as you just said, Putin is all intents and purposes a dictator, isn't he, really? I know they have these elections. Anyone actually believe they're actually free elections?
No.
So you just said, so we've got a leader who cannot allow Ukraine to have any semblance of affiliation to the West, no part of NATO, and if that's going to happen, the only way out of this is for the West to guarantee that Ukraine does not become a member of NATO, and I don't think they're going to do that, or Russia actually piles in there and says, right, this is what's happening. You're not doing it. It's off the table. You can stay independent, but you're not joining NATO. You can forget it.
Do you not think there's a bit of deflection tactics going on here from both sides? And I mean, Russians as well as NATO, because it strikes me that maybe this, post-pandemic and the aftershocks of pandemic, there's stuff going on with Russia, maybe a bit of economic unrest, and there's nothing better than deflecting your nation's attention away by saying there's an evil here and we've got to sort that out. And also sometimes you've got to keep your military busy, because if they're not busy, they're busy plotting against you. So part of me looks at this and thinks Putin's using this as an opportunity to try to say we're powerful and we're still big to his own country, and also to keep them focused on something else and away from whatever else is going on.
I think with Putin, he knows how powerful he is. He doesn't need to saber rattle now, because we said this a few times before in other podcasts. How much energy and resources does Russia control with gas? I mean, we've already noticed gas prices are already going through the roof with bills and things like that. And Gazprom is one of the biggest petroleum outfits in the world. He doesn't need to do that. He's got an economic stranglehold over the world anyway, to be honest with you. It's actually, I'm surprised he needs to do this in any case. But I think the main thing here is that strategically, he cannot allow Ukraine to be affiliated to the West. His position in the Kremlin would be absolutely weakened, and he always prides himself on being, from a position of strength. He's a narcissist. He's egotistical, isn't he? He's not gonna stand for that. And like you said, Paul, he won't back down here, will he?
No, and I fully agree with what you said in there, Ash, that he's no need to prove to the world how powerful he is, because the world's under no disillusion about just how powerful Russia are, and he knows it. He knows it. He can virtually do what he wants to do, but it's just this. It's like you say, Ukraine is so perfectly sited. If they wanted to launch anything against, I'm not saying they would win against Russia, but it's because if there were a couple of borders away from Russia, he might be more lenient, but it's bang on the border of Russia, and it's going to be a thorn in his side. I mean, there's been the upsets and the wars between Ukraine and Russia for many years. I mean, hundreds of years. It's gone on. Ukraine want independence. You're now owned by Moscow. They're back in independence. It's backwards and forwards. It's like, but for most of the time, it's been not so much in the spotlight of the world. This is now in the spotlight of the world, because that key word here is NATO. And as soon as that word is mentioned, countries, leaders start panicking over the word NATO. And the world, I would imagine, start panicking over, because to the layman, I would expect that NATO means nuclear power. And if you have a nuclear powered war, we're all dead. And that's, we hope that no one's stupid enough to be pressing buttons like that. I don't know. I don't know if they are. I don't think they are. I hope they're not. But you just never know, do you? You never know.
I think it goes beyond the nuclear power thing. I think what will happen is what you don't want is what we had is some kind of conflict like we had in Afghanistan, where it just goes on. It's a war of attrition for years on end. It's just, you just don't want to go there. But the negotiations aren't working at all, are they? No one's talking really. What
worries me is I think that some of the world leaders use these situations to do a bit of international posturing. So, for example, and not in this particular order, but it was quite convenient for Boris Johnson to get away from Parliament in the last week and be seen alongside other NATO leads and world powers, and not be seen sitting in London and dealing with the stuff he's been dealing with recently. And I believe we are the second biggest NATO contributor after America. So we naturally would have a place there. But I was sitting thinking, how many of these world powers is it quite nice to get away out of the country, get onto the international stage, and look statesman-like or states-lady-like, and really important. And I hope the goodness their ego wouldn't get a hold of them, in that situation. And that's where you realize, these are sometimes fine lines are drawn here. So I was a little bit worried that there's a little bit of, it could have really a bit of posturing on both sides.
Well, I think you have to admit, if you looked at Boris Johnson, you're talking about how much gravitas Boris Johnson has in the international stage now with what's been going on. It's been shown. No one's taken any notice of him. And then Liz Truss, from the government, she was treated with so much disrespect. At the end of the day, her counterpart was over the table, arms folded, and the etiquette is that you let your guest go first. He just stormed off. So we're looking at, if you want to look at where our standing is in the world, this is telling us.
Well, actually, I did think what came to my mind was that our officials looked like Mr. Bean had turned up, and that they'd managed to walk on the set somehow, and for some reason we didn't look like we were a world power, and it wasn't just Boris, but Boris is the worst. But we just didn't look like we're. Yet we are the second biggest contributor, I think, to NATO. We would be there by right anyway, but we just didn't look states-like, and you're thinking this is not good enough, this is where image does count,
you think that Boris might have a Churchillian moment. He completely dropped the ball. He didn't have one there, did he?
Yeah. Do you know what? I don't think we've given that impression of authority and statesmanship since Thatcher.
Possibly.
I think Thatcher was the
epitome of it.
Absolutely so. When she spoke, walked in the room, world leaders would pay attention because she was no nonsense. She said how it was. She wasn't there to please anybody other than her country, do what was right for her country. And people think she didn't get the Iron Lady name for no reason. And I don't think, and you see what we've gone from an era of where Britain could, would, and were able to demand certain things from the rest of the world, and God help the world if they refused England or didn't give. Nowadays, it's all pampering, and we don't have any fight left in us. And like you say, that meeting of late, we looked like somebody. Oh, we need another party here. Let's drag somebody in off the street and sit them down, and let's see what they look like. There's no authority there anymore. It just looks like Boris just looks like a joke when he's out there.
So how do you think the other European leaders, the other NATO leaders, do you think, how have they come across? How do we look as though we're in good hands?
Well, do you know, there's quite a few NATO leaders that the thing with the NATO leaders that are there, I think they've been in the position of whether it's a presidency or a prime ministership for quite some time and have kind of a respect of the nation that they're in. So they go to these meetings with you know what, we've been at it for quite a while. This is what our public want. We've come here to represent our country. To me, it looks like Boris has just gone for a bit of a jolly.
Like Rod said, away from it.
Yeah, like he doesn't know really the agenda or what's on the table because he's not listening to anybody. He's got everything going on in his mind, no doubt, about Partygate. He's got everything going on about his own party backstabbing him and asking him to resign. He's got too much going on to try and go to a NATO meeting or the meeting in Ukraine with any kind of passion. He hasn't got any passion for it. I don't know.
Well, I think that for me the word is kudos. Now I know in a lot of these types of things, all the work's done by advisors talking behind the scenes, and essentially the leader's there to rubber stamp on whatever. But it just it does go to show that sometimes on the world stage, when you're looking to promote and a bit of propaganda positivity, if you like, we don't look like we have it. We don't look like we have the sharp teeth, if you like, for it. At all. But and I think these things matter. This is all it's all dialogue at the moment. Hopefully it'll remain there, but you've got to be good at that game of basically being able to offer a threat without being offensive, if that makes sense, of actually carrying through with it. And Putin, I think, is the master of it. I mean, Putin would be brilliant in. You can imagine Putin in Flash Gordon. He would be Ming.
Yeah, he is very good. He has. I mean, there's a number. I can't give you dates, but there are a number of incidents over the past, let's say, 10 years where Putin has threatened to do something, and by God, did the world bow down to him? Yeah. Because they know he will carry it. It's not a threat to him. He's actually said to him, look, if this doesn't happen, I will do this. I'm not threatening you. Don't take it as a threat. It's actually what I'm going to do. So let's talk about it. I was quite surprised, actually. Do you know what? I've got to actually say that I am a bit dumb when it comes to Ukraine's. It's a lot bigger than you think, isn't it? Ukraine, the country of Ukraine. I didn't realize it was so big in size. But can anybody enlighten me on the history of why keeping the Ukraine or trying to stop it doing it is of so much importance to Russia?
Well, you said it before, Paul. It's a strategic thing with NATO, number one. But the second thing, which is coming back to your question, is about was it about 6 years ago, 2014, Russia annexed Crimea as well, and that was they basically said that that historically that's always been part of Russia, and that when Russia disintegrated, they wanted that back basically, so they annexed that. So I'm just wondering, I wonder if that's potentially could happen here, maybe, some kind of an annexing of some the nearest parts of Ukraine, if that makes any sense, to the border, and doing it that way, so the border's further away. So I don't know, but I mean, I think they just look at it as the USSR as it was then. It was a gigantic block, and they've never really got over that, have they?
I'm just reading here. The Ukraine is the second largest country by area in Europe after Russia.
Wow! So you're right.
It's got a population of 41.3 million people, which is quite big in itself. So it's a big country. But can you imagine when the USSR had that and all the other? I mean, it was quite unbelievable size.
Yeah, it was. The Soviet Union was. You look at the old maps and see where it is. The Soviet Union across those maps, and it's just vast. It's absolutely vast. I mean, the good thing, if it is a good thing, and if the news rumors can be believed, he's withdrawn a small percentage of his troops today, I think, but kept some still exercising there. But I think he's taken a very small percentage of his troops away. So there's some hope. I mean, he's still got, what is it, something like 70% of his troops that need, or 70% of the amount of troops needed to go to a full-scale war. So he's still got that amount there. But again, I can understand Putin, because in a way, if you're the president of Russia, you're looking at the rest of the world, and you must think to yourself, how many more nations can possibly point their nuclear weapons at this country? So that's probably why, because he knows the Americans have got them all pointed towards, and no doubt Britain have got them somewhere pointed, France, and now he's thinking, God, even the Ukraine that's just next door, they're going to have everything pointed to us because they hate the Russian regime. They hate that, we might be able to take them over. So I can kind of get it when he is probably thinking, Christ, another NATO base that's going to be pointing towards us.
I think personally, sometimes there's just a lot of posturing with this, and maybe he feels under pressure within his own government or his own party or whatever, however it works in Russia, where he has to be seen to do something.
Yeah.
Because he's looking to, I think, run another term, which would be quite different. I think this would be his third or fourth term as president of Russia. So he's looking to do that. But I'm just reading here, actually. I didn't realize that Ukraine apparently is the poorest country in Europe.
Wow.
So it's one of the largest, but it's one of the poorest as well. And it maintains the third largest military in Europe after Russia and France.
Wow.
It's an interesting country, and you just goes to show how little you know about a certain country until something like this happens.
Yeah, exactly.
It's massive, and apparently it's ranked 74th in the Human Development Index. Not sure what that means, because it's the poorest country in Europe, apparently.
Well, they're spending so much of their wealth on maintaining their military, obviously, aren't they?
Yeah. Was it not Shevchenko? Was he not the footballer? Was he not Ukrainian? Did he not try to run for president or something?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. But then Russia is actually bankrolling the separatists, aren't they, as well? Because there's a subgroup within Ukraine who want to be affiliated to Russia, and Russia is basically trying to bankroll them as well. But I think the bigger picture here is, rewinding right from where we started, is how much influence Russia has in the world anyway, not least because it's military, but because of everything else. But you look at how much money, Russian money, pours into, look at the London property markets and things. It's pricing people out of property, isn't it? And how, what did someone call it? We said London is basically the Russian laundromat for money, because it's where all the money laundering basically just happens here. So we need to, if we're so determined to get this sorted out, why not start with that and give the economy a good chance as well, so people can get on the property ladder down south as well.
See, this again is the thing, isn't it? Why we might be seen to be doing, but we don't want to be pushing too hard, because I know it's hurting people trying to get on the property ladder, but there's no government on earth is going to stop that amount of money being invested in their country. It's never going to happen.
Never.
It's an unfortunate thing that we can't generate our own kind of income and sort of get everybody on that property ladder, bring property. But it's beyond measure how much money. It's like the far, is it the east or west, something of Turkey? Total Russian money. Every posh hotel that's been built, Russian money, Russian mafia money. It's just, that's what it's built on. Turkey aren't going to turn around and say, we don't want your money anymore, thanks very much, because it's free money. It's what they're getting. It's investment. It's massive. We're not talking millions of pounds here. We're talking billions upon billions of pounds, and those go a long way to sorting things out. So.
Do you know the one good thing about that? Because you could turn around and say it's not, like our national interest to have something like that. But the one thing it does is that everything has become so interconnected that actually it might actually prevent the sort of territorial warfare that you used to get in the past, because everybody has got interests in all the other countries, so it may not be great from a national point of view. It might actually bring a bit of stability internationally.
Well, I absolutely agree with that, and I'll go back as far as when the Cold War ended. and the amount of countries that started trading with each other when the Cold War ended, and the amount of countries that were trading heavily with Moscow and Russia, it really started creating this international spider's web of commerce, and it's. I know we've had recessions since, but it is boosting economies. The problem being is that when you get a fallout, if you fall out with France, who suddenly turn around and say, well, you're not having your gas back, we're buggered. Russia, they fall out, well, you're not having your gas supplies, you're not having this supply. And that's where it gets very, very fraught, very fragile, this web that we've got going.
Yeah, I feel that we are compromised too easily.
Yes, we are. We definitely are. Do you know something? Just going away from Putin at the moment, and let's go to this Brexit. We should have made sure before we had the vote, people wanted to leave. That's great. We should have made our little island a self-sufficient, functioning and profitable island before we did anything about leaving Brexit, because we literally went out with, we still rely on lots of countries. We have North Sea gas, our gas that's piped over to France because we can't bloody store it in England or where, we haven't got the storage facilities. So we pipe it to France, who store it and sell it as back at a profit. What? I don't get it. It's crackers.
Well, what it comes down to is, if it was a project, right, and I've done numerous different projects, right, before a piece of IT goes live, you have go live readiness criteria, right, and you basically say, are we ready to do this, right, and we met the criteria, and you would have turned around and said, is Britain ready to be more independent, right? So can we make our own fuel? Can we do this? Can we do that? What's our ties with our allies? And I think if you looked at all of those, you turn around and say, we are too massively dependent on too many other nations for us to go down a more independent route. But I think because nobody actually expected us to, the country to vote in that way, it was all a game basically. So it was, and this is the problem, is that vote became emotion over logic. Because we are not ready. We didn't have the conditions in place to be more independent from Europe on so many different levels. We've become so intertwined with it. And then the things that we weren't going to be dependent upon them for were our allies that we could depend on, and a lot of them are very unstable at this moment in time. Now, that was regardless of the pandemic. So, and what worries me is there'll be other countries in that situation at the moment, and they'll all be posturing to make themselves look more important on the world stage. And these things could be very fragile. And you would hate to see a situation where somebody would push towards some sort of confrontation just because it deflects attention away from what's going on.
Well, there's a lot of that going on at the minute, isn't there? Let's be honest. All over the world, there's the royal family, there's Partygate, there's too much going on, and then other things happening where it's these people take a breather and go, oh, thank Christ. Look at Prince Andrew. I bet he was absolutely giddy as hell when COVID came along first. He was like, yes, come on. But that's the thing about, you see, this is why we shouldn't have gone ahead with Brexit just yet, because we lost 2 years of not being able to get the cohesion that we needed to be a proper independent country on our own. Because we know that we had the pandemic, and they should have put it on the back burner and said, look, we need to deal with this pandemic first, then we can start looking at Brexit. But they just went ahead with it in the middle of a pandemic. Ridiculous.
That was all of it. Was party political, wasn't it? The people who actually, the power brokers who got Boris Johnson in, they wanted it to be forced through. And like you said, it was just it wasn't organized at all very well. I mean, if you looked at it, if a company, like you just said there, Rod, if a company implemented anything else, like in the way that Brexit was, the CEO would have been fired immediately, because that would have been perceived as an absolute disaster, wouldn't it?
I guess the parallels back to what was going on with Ukraine is that these guys, governments, leaders, they play games at times, and sometimes they manage to control the game so it doesn't get out of control. I think, back to Brexit. Brexit was one of those things where a lot of people thought it'll never get through, but we've got to offer it, and it's you could say it's backfired for a lot of people. It hasn't. That's it, But the point is, were all the points of readiness in the right state? Are we in a fit state to go ahead with that? I'm not so sure that we are, but I guess going back to Putin, I sometimes feel like there's a lot of posturing on the world stage, a lot of flexing. It's a bit like the guys in Muscle Beach in Los Angeles, just flexing their muscles, and I think there's been a bit of that going on, but it's actually suited some, I think, of the NATO powers to be looking more, statesman-like. And deflected away from their own problems, which I think also that's what Putin's possibly been doing.
I mean, do you not think, if you actually distill it right down to the basics here, what it actually just shows us now is that the whole world really is in the hands of just a few countries really now. You've got Russia on one side, China on the other, and maybe this is not fair, a waning America, which is coming down now as well. So you're getting a little bit of a power vacuum forming, and you're getting, this is what's going to happen now. There's going to be countries, powerhouses, who are, due to their, we said before, the energy resources, commodity resources. Same with China. They've been going into Africa big because they want to get the commodities. And, if you look at how much influence China has in Africa, you'll be absolutely amazed, in terms of what the resources they're trying to commandeer here now. And I think this is what's going to happen now. I don't know, I'm not saying we need to get used to it, but I don't know what really the world can do about this, to be honest with you. There's not an awful lot when someone has got you by the what basically. If you complain too much, off the tap goes for whatever resource you need. And China is the same thing. If you look at, they say it's the commodity basket of the world. If you're looking at all the manufacturing, it all happens in China, doesn't it? Apple and all these chips, tire, all come from China. I mean, we can all make the West makes all the right noises. Oh, China's human rights and this, that, and the other. And they've been saying this for many, many, many years. What has happened about that? Oh yeah, a big fat nothing. Because why? Because you can't do anything about it. You need all the millions and billions and trillions, or whatever it is, of money that China and Russia basically have.
But you don't think these things are cyclical? You'll maybe get 60, 80 year cycles where there's a certain new world order, and then that gets broken up. So, not that, several centuries ago, the UK, Great Britain, ruled the waves, was instrumental in the world. And then that changed. And then you had America having a certain dominance in the world. That's now changed. China undoubtedly has world dominance, if you like, in terms of their fingers in the pie. But it'll just go through a cycle. It's the way it goes, really.
Yeah.
Britain threw away their empire, didn't they? They gave it away and gave it back all too willingly. To my way of thinking, I think they should have remained. You know what? We could have been a superpower. There's probably 4 superpowers in the world, isn't there? And unfortunately, England latches onto the one that's the biggest and the most popular at the minute. I mean, like Ash was saying, you've got China, America, Russia. Do you know? I actually what? Sorry,
Europe, maybe. If you look at the
I don't know. I'm keeping out of Europe. The only one I can think of that I don't even know if it's
You're living in it.
Yeah, Skiathos. It is a super powered island. No, Japan. Japan have a lot of they've got a massive military force, but apart from that, they are the technological geniuses of the world in my mind. They're absolutely amazing with the stuff they invent and develop and bring out there. And I think if they were to pull the plug on innovation and what they produce, a lot of feathers would be ruffled. So I don't know if it's classed as a superpower, but I'm going to class it as a superpower because I really think Japan is. I really do.
Mm. Well, there you go. From Russia with Love, it'll be that was the international correspondent's view of the world. You know, I often think, you know, there'll be conference calls that Boris will be doing with the Iran and America and whatever else. You sort of think, you know, are they like this? You know, do they get on Zoom and go, "Oh, what about you? You know, doing all right?"
Oh, they're not as passionate, are they? They're not as passionate as us boys, tell you.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so there you go. That is the internationally acclaimed, internationally focused episode today from Russia with Love on the life after work. Episode 42, did I say something like that?
43.
43, there you go. Episode 43. Lucky for you. We'll be back next week. Goodness knows what we're going to talk about. It's whatever happens in the world or how we feel. I've got a few topics actually, but we'll come to those at some stage. So we might be back as 4 as well next week. So until then,
maybe before you go, I was just thinking maybe we should start talking about where we're going to do our 50th one. You know, because that'd be a big one. So maybe, I don't know, we can
somewhere Greek. You're thinking somewhere Greek?
Oh, he's thinking somewhere warm. Yeah, is he?
Well, possibly. We could do.
Yeah, it could be
a place where we could actually, you know, meet together in person somewhere. You know,
that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
House.
I think we actually, that's a good point, Ash. We're going to have to do something special for the 50th.
Yeah.
It's only 7-8 weeks away. We'll have to do something special for that. Yeah.
I think so.
Right. Okay. We'll get our thinking caps on. So until then, we will be back next week, hopefully. And if Phil Harrison can be bothered, signing out.
Signing out. Have a great week, guys.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.